He controls that monster, he does.
Bring him out.
Bring him out.
Keep them back. Hold the line. Get back. Get back.
We want justice.
Yeah, justice now. We've
Yeah,
had enough of
justice.
this.
Yeah.
Time's been come to pay.
Bring him out.
Don't take any more, you buggers.
Let's eat the rich.
Let's see if we can find a way in around the back.
Hello and welcome to the LARP News Podcast. My name is Dave and today we're going to learn about all things Dawn, and we've got a couple of very special guests. We've got Maz and we've got Geoffrey. Say hello, everyone.
Hey there.
Hello.
Maz, let's start off with you. How long have you been at Dawn, and what do you kind of do within the nation?
Okay, so I moved into Dawn, I don't know, I want to say like second year of Empire. So how long ago was that? Whatever that was. Anyone?
About 2014.
So that long ago? Can't be that long ago.
Last year was year 8.
Ever. I've been in Dawn for basically ever. It's lots of fun. It's a good old place to be. Yeah.
And what do you do there?
Dawn, I play a character who is a noble of Dawn. Started off as a knight errant and kind of worked our way through, and that's an awful lot of fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am currently the sort of acting for my Earl, who is no longer on the field at Anvil.
Interesting.
So.
All right. We'll come back to. I have some questions about what you just said just then, but we'll move on. Geoffrey, please tell me.
Hello.
And we should just say, I want to say on a personal note, Geoffrey is like, I think I'm right in saying this, Geoffrey, the first person to get in contact with us when we started making the podcast. So this is a really nice thing.
I'm a fan as well.
Listeners. I think I prefer listeners, but Geoffrey, it's so great that you get to join us and you get to talk at length about Dawn.
I'm honoured to be here.
Sorry,
Same
Geoffrey, go
question
ahead,
to me?
please. Yeah, go ahead.
I started Dawn with the start of the game. I've been playing it there since E1 year 1. I'm on my 3rd Dawnish character, and I'm unlikely to ever leave.
Wow. Wow. The grass is never greener for you, huh? You're just happy.
I'm pretty good. A lot of my friends have told me it's a fairly good fit. I mean,
you do seem happy there, that's for sure.
Yeah. I first looked at it when it came out. When it came out, I went, yes, I think I'll go for that one. The costumes looked good in terms of bold colours and bright steel. The themes of a fairly aggressive, decisive, and vain group seemed to work fairly well. And there was a line in the original nation breakdown, which is Dawn is proud of itself and has right to be. For alone of all the imperial nations, it has never lost territory to the barbarians. And I thought, that sounds like a good group of people.
Is that still true?
No.
Well, we never actually held the whole of the Barons.
Wow.
So we've never actually lost a territory.
Right.
That's immediately
lose bits.
for anyone listening. For anyone listening right now, that is some proper Dawn chat right there. That is exactly what it sounds like talking to someone from Dawn. That was an on-field experience of what that's like.
Yeah.
Maz, maybe you could tell me Geoffrey just touched on a whole bunch of them just then, but maybe you can talk about what the general themes of being Dawn are, maybe the archetypes, and then we'll go into a bit more detail of what it's like to be Dawnish.
Okay, well, Dawn's very much a game of two parts. You've got your nobles and you've got your yo folk. The nobles, in order to become a noble, you have to complete a test of mettle, which is set by the Earl of the house that you want to join into. Test of mettle, well, there's so many tests in Dawn. They're really, really fun to play. So test of mettle to become a noble if that's what you want to do. There's a test of ardor if you're a noble. If you want to marry someone from another house, you can't marry within your own house because that's yucky.
Yeah.
If you want to marry a noble of another house, then you need to complete a test of ardor to then move into that house. And those tests are an amazing excuse for shenanigans.
Hazing, you might say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fabulous. So the more glorious the test, the better. Oh yeah, tests of resolve, yeah, which are the you've done a bad thing, we're going to get rid of you tests.
Oh. But they can also go down to. They can also go,
sorry, Geoffrey. Have you seen one of those in play?
Tests of resolve sometimes tend to be, Are you willing to bleed for your point of view, for your argument? If so, I shall meet you in the glory square in 5 minutes. So it's that sort of arguments.
I had one of those over a chair once.
Yeah.
Maz, I believe you. I've actually we've crossed paths before because I am I don't know how I term that now. It's been over a year, but I was a runner for the auxiliaries, and I ran a couple of times for Dawn, and we ended up joining each other a few times in like a line fight. And Maz, you are a serious customer on the battlefield. Like you've got a little posse around you, and you guys mean business. It's cool.
I can definitely, I absolutely back that up, Maz. There's many a time when it's a case of everybody's falling back and Maz screams, "Rally on me! Counterattack!"
Yeah.
And they do.
We talk about often talk about how it's like you can't there's no stat for please, I apologize for the blushes I'm going to cause you here, but like the charisma vibe of someone on the battlefield and how important they are. And Maz definitely feels like one of those people when I've interacted with you where you'll be like. People will just be like, all right, we're staying here because Maz is staying here, right? And that's just the way it's going to be, right?
It all works perfectly until it all goes wrong and we all die.
Again, that's very Dawnish right there. Like the total annihilation of an entire group is quite common, I think, in Dawn.
Dawn has a tendency on the battlefield to win in one of two ways. Either we carry all before us and smash our way to victory, or we win over a large pile of our own dead.
So
either way, we win.
I started in Varushka, and one of the reasons we chose Dawn to move across was at one point we were on a flank when we stood in Varushka we're on the right flank to Dawn, and we were in the woods. And for me, there's a real kind of the epitome of embodiment of Dawn was when my peripheral vision's not great, which is one of the reasons why I fall back late, because I don't notice other people doing it, if I'm honest. I just heard a noble go, excuse me, a lady in the red, would you mind terribly dressing to your right? Which was terribly Dawnish. And then the person next to him, after I didn't move, obviously, because I was in the middle of something, the person next to him just yelled, "Oi, that's with a shield! Get back here!" And that was the real kind of the two embodiment of the two sides of Dawn. And that was how I met some real characters that I've had a lot of fun with playing since.
It's one of the things. It's one of the things I actually quite like. I played a paladin in a campaign of D&D recently for like a fairly long, extensive campaign, and the entire character was basically quite posh and nice, but then really came to life during violence. And I think that's something that's quite cool about that whole it's chivalric. I've never used that word before. I think that's how that word. Chivalric. Okay, we're going with that.
It's one of these ones that nobody says, so the pronunciation is kind of vague.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever said that word before, and now luckily I get to say it on a podcast. Fantastic for people to listen to. But that kind of idea of being quite polite and nice and all that stuff, but then when it comes to business time, it's a full-on violent expression, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Dawn doesn't embody chivalry, but it does embody very strong traditions.
Yeah, maybe I'm lacking the language for this because I get what you mean. There is a difference, because I think when I say like chivalry and things like that, we think of like helping young maidens across rivers and writing stuff like
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's some very negative connotations with a great deal of that.
One of the quote on the Dawn page is, "Great deeds are eternal." So what Dawn wants to do is it wants to do the big impressive thing that gets remembered. And often this is the big heroic deed. But to be fair, this can also be the big treacherous deed. It can also be that time you screwed up in some dramatic manner and they punted your head back to us. So Dawn goes for the big obvious thing quite a lot. And sometimes that can be the traditional chivalric heroic deed. I'm going to step forth and challenge the dragon, for example.
Yeah. Or something as proving your love. Love is a really big deal. Love and romance in Dawn is a really big thing.
Oh yeah,
so that's fun to play with, especially if you kind of knock into other nations who obviously think you're insane to do it that way.
Yeah, I think it's hard work. If you're gonna all the nations have their foibles, right? But I'm a Navari, so for like romance in Navarre is like you kind of do what you feel, right? Whereas the League you have to maybe is it League where you have to do pay for it, right? But in Dawn, you have to work your butt off to try and impress whoever is how does that work? Is it the person being courted or the leader of their group? Like who lays down?
The person being courted sets a test of ardor.
Wow.
Yeah, you've got to be. So it's the person. So the person you court obviously needs to be an impressive
I
enough
sound like
courtship.
my grandparents right now courting.
An impressive enough courtship to catch their eye, but then you have to prove if you want to then test into their house to marry them, you have to pass a test of ardor, which is set usually by the earl or an earl enchanter or enchantress of the house.
Ugh.
So it really does sort of depend on that, really.
There's one of the origin stories in Dawn, an origin story of the Empire, which is the last king and the first empress, which has got 2 tests in it. Do you remember this one, Maz?
Yeah, keep going. It's a good one.
Which is that yes, a lady came from Highgard to compete in the tournament of King Roderick the Lame, and basically wanted to become a noble of Dawn in one fell swoop, and was given therefore the incredibly difficult test of jump over that chasm in full armor, and so she went and got her horse and did it.
Yeah.
And the king was so impressed with this that he asked for her hand in marriage. And she then set him a test of ardor, which was, give me the crown of Dawn. Or rather, give the monarchy of Dawn into the Empire.
Okay.
And that's how Dawn joined the Empire.
And that, yes. So in fact, the first empress, whose name is forgotten, her first husband was the last king of Dawn.
Well, that's awesome.
In fact, it was mentioned earlier, knight errant and noble and similar. There's about 5 ranks in Dawn. You've got the Yo folk. If they want to test up to become a noble, they can become a knight errant, and there they've got the title of Sir. And if they get to a noble, they are lord or lady, whatever, of the house. And if they're the leading the house, they are earl or possibly enchanter of the house. And the rank above that is in fact monarch.
Sorry, enchanter.
Yes, that's for an earl who's more of a wizard. So, for example, if you've got if you had a noble of a house who was leading the house and who was, for example, a ritualist or a battle mage or something, then they might be called enchanter as opposed to earl. Functionally identical. It's just clarification for their skill set, really.
What was the next one? Sorry.
Monarch. Do you want to handle Monarch of Dawn, Maz? It's your field of expertise.
Bios. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the kind of the Monarch of Dawn, the Queen of Dawn. There was a so our last Empress, her Imperatrix Elizabeth von Holberg, who was a player, in the game, she was undergoing a test set by all the Earls of Dawn in order to gain the crown of Dawn to become Queen of Dawn. That was a fantastic test. It never got completed, sadly, because.
Hold on. So has anyone in game held this title yet?
Yes. No. She won the tournament for it.
Oh yeah, she did win the tournament for it. So yes, but there was also, there was more stuff to do, really.
And then it was in the middle of the Yale schism as well.
Yeah.
Basically, because the title of Monarch of Dawn got assigned to the throne. Since that point in the history, any of the people holding the throne can try to claim the crown of Dawn.
Right.
To do this, they've got to have enough Dornish supporting them in a big royal tournament to beat up everybody who's not supporting them. So in the backstory, I think there's only been about 3 or 4 of the emperors or empresses who've also been king or queen of Dawn.
Oh, it's such a cool concept. So you have like a giant melee, basically, of all these fighters.
In fact, last tournament... Sorry,
you go.
A couple of years ago, Lisa Betta did try that, and at the same time, there was somebody running around claiming to be the reincarnation of the first Empress. So we actually had a 3-sided tournament of all the nobles of Dawn, a huge scrum for one side going Lisa Betta for queen, one side going Yale for queen, and one side going none of the above. And it was large and it was messy and it was great fun. And Lisa Betta's team won. So she spent a couple of battles, in fact, fighting alongside Dawn in full golden armor.
I've seen the
very shiny.
Pictures, yeah.
I know, it was great. With her throne guard captain Maz.
Oh my god, though. seriously, the hardest battles I've done, it's just like, please don't. Because she's like, I will be in the front. I'm like, yes, you will be in the front. This is indeed glorious. Oh my gosh, she's going to die. No, it's going to be fun. There are a couple of occasions where it's just like, where there were a few close calls where I thought, yeah, we are all going down here.
You
But yeah,
certainly
I mean,
make a pretty good target. I mean, it's and
To
also
be
a
fair,
shiny
she was
one. It's not like you're subtle either. It's not like you're kind of blending in with everyone else. It's this giant shiny blob there, right, of
with
troops.
the massive banner,
Yeah.
the massive over here banner. Yeah.
Please come kill us. It's you'll be telling everyone about this afterwards, banner. Yeah, it's not good.
To be fair, you were hiding the person in the golden ornate armor in the middle of dawn, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's like
One of the things.
sorry, go on.
Sorry.
No, go on, Matt, sorry.
One of the things about the tests, which is really good, is that you can. So say you really want someone in your group, and they're going to test across for a test of ardor or a test of metal or something like this. You can't give them an easy test, because if you give them an easy test, that's inglorious. But if you give them too hard a test, you're basically saying we don't want you in our group, or you're saying we think you are so glorious that you will get in our group anyway, and so become a member of our house. And so you want in character to have the hardest test possible. I mean, it took me almost 2 years to get my test of metal.
What was your test of metal, Maz?
To accept and complete a challenge from each egregore of each nation.
Oh my
And
god!
do you know
What?
Yeah,
What?
and the last. I know, right? It was insane. And the last, I'd had to do all sorts. I had to find out what noise Troll's eyelashes made. The marchers were awful. I had to go in and shave a giant piece of sugar, which was like the least good. It was really very marcher, because they all took the mickey at me about not
Sorry,
doing good.
what did you have to do? You had to shave a what?
Shave a giant piece of sugar, like the size of my head. Which obviously for a glorious Dawnish night, you're like, what is this?
What do you mean
that you're
shave it? I don't understand. I can't. My brain can't figure out what you mean by that. A lump of
It was
sugar.
a big block. Yeah, a big block of sugar, and I had to turn it into sugar. It
She
was
had to
just
grind it down. She had to
grind it
basically cut
down.
it into little
Oh my
pieces.
god! Who?
Well,
What
so much.
sadist came up with that? What the?
the old egregore. He was just the worst. He wasn't. He was amazing, obviously. In character, he was just the worst.
How did
because
you find a giant? I've never seen a giant hunk of sugar before.
hanging
It's
around?
called a sugar loaf.
It's just, yeah. So you had things like that. But then the final one, which the Dawnish egregore did, so wait until I'd completed all the other ones.
Nice.
And there was various things. There was like win a significant military battle in a Valorn miasma from Earthen Var, for instance. But the one from Dawn was, you've got a choice. You can do the easy one, and you can lead Dawn on the field of battle. Or you can be a bit more glorious. I mean, who's not going to take that when it's put like that?
I mean,
You'd be a bit
honestly,
more glorious, don't it?
red rag to a bull. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be truly glorious, what you want to do is lead the entire armies of the Empire who are arrayed in as Field Marshal of the Empire and win a military battle.
oh no! Honestly, those military. Not to put down any field marshals, but it does feel a lot like a coin flip a lot of the time when field marshals go out. You know?
It was the most fun I have had in years.
Which one was that, Maz?
It was the one where we were protecting a town in the morn, and we had to sneak someone through to get a message.
Oh my God, I
You know,
remember
the really
that
hard
one. Yes,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
told the story of that for
Herald
years.
hunting.
It's one of the most glorious battles of Dawn.
It was, so we had to send Dawn in to get hunted by
You
heralds in order to
commanded that?
sneak this person
Wow.
through. Whilst
That's
whilst
the
everybody else
story.
was in the main field. It was just epic. I loved it. And seriously, have you ever played like Rome Total War or Medieval
Yes.
Total War or
I
something like
might
that?
have dabbled a little bit. Yes.
Okay, it is that, but you're like there. And so literally, so at one point, I'm trying to remember, it was Wintermark. At one point, Wintermark, there was a bunch of, they were far side of the field. There was a bunch of orcs they hadn't yet seen yet coming through that copse on the left side.
Mhm.
And so I sent a runner, and this is why runners are the best people in the world.
We really
I sent a runner called, I can't remember his real name. We called him Watch. He was from the Marches. I called him Watch because my watch broke, so he had hold of it. And I sent him down to I said, just run through. There were like orcs between us and the Wintermark, but I said, Wintermark are about to get smashed in the flank. Run down, compliments of the Field Marshal, please wheel left. And so he like ran through all these orcs. He's dodging and weaving and ducking and diving. He makes it line into Wintermark, who are split off from us at the time. He tells them, and then just computer game, they just like wheeled, and it looked so pretty as well when Wintermark did it. They just like all wheeled to the left, and then the orcs were face on, and then they crushed them, and it was just beautiful. I was so impressed with Wintermark, and I was so impressed with that runner, but I felt like a god.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I did the. We've done a few episodes on a few different subjects, and we did the military one. And the worst thing about doing this podcast is, like, I now want to do the military game after hearing that story again, but I also want to do the medical game. I want to do, like, the full-on religious game. There's a lot to it, but yeah, I think
there's plenty to investigate.
Yeah, I think that just the idea of commanding that many people is gonna be. I mean, it's very cinematic when you were at the front, but being at the back, let alone having command over everything, is
that battle Maz commanded for getting that in. I was with the main Dornish force. And so we went off into the woods and then came back. And by the time we came back, it was all getting rather sticky. And I was at the front rank as we all poured out, as Dawn poured out of the woods, completely ambushing the Jotun flanking assault. And I was able at the front to raise my sword at them and scream, "Days of glory, nights of war, Dawn is upon you." And then we all charged.
That's so cool.
I mean,
I particularly remember that because there was a guy who's now my unit leader. Danny plays Lupo, and he was there on the flank all by himself, looking over it. And he looked over, and then suddenly Dawn turns up to hold the flank, and he raised his spear towards us and screamed in a glorious voice, in a cracking voice, "Dawn, you glorious bastard!" I've been telling the story of that battle as characters ever since. It's just one of those moments where it all worked out beautifully and was very nice.
I think if you spend any time on the field at Empire, you're gonna have a good Dawn story. Like from and this is for other people. Like there was one where we're all at the gate, one of the gates to get through, and it just come to this stalemate where there were just a ring of orcs at the other side of the gate. And just
this was on the battlefield.
Yeah, it was perfect death. And then everyone rocked up there and was like, "Well, that looks like a terrible thing to do." And then the word came out that Dawn were going to deal with it, and literally the whole crowd parted for this column of Dawn to go through. And it was just everyone was chanting, and then it was just, I think they were chanting "glory" or whatever the hell it was, and then we were all cheering them on, and then they just charged into this absolute hellish chaos of clashing steel as they went through the gate. But holy crap, that was an exciting moment just to watch, let alone be a part of. Thank you. Amazing.
Dawn tend to be fairly visual.
yeah we did
As a Dornish person, the people that I've probably got the most stories about on the field of coming to the rescue is Urzan. The amount of time Urzan have literally saved my character's life on that battlefield is just unbelievable. They're always quickest to come pick us up, I swear.
Yeah. On the subject of tests of metal, are quite a lot that are fairly all over the place, such as Maz's one, which was challenges from everybody. There are quite a lot that go towards the martial side of it. So at the simplest, it's things like fight your way through a couple of battles and acquit yourself well, because frankly, those are scary as well. But my first character was a knight errant, and he was a battlefield physic. So his test of metal was to heal 40 different Dornish on their death counts, which, if you're with the same group, can take ages. I think I worked out it would probably take me about 3 years to do it.
How did you do it?
Well, I took the battlefield, I went on skirmishes, and when I healed people up, I carefully got their names and told my lord afterwards.
Oh, I love the idea of you listing them off. All 40 is pretty.
Well, the idea is that character eventually died, but at his funeral there were lords of Dawn around him saying, "I would not be here if not for this guy, nor I, nor I, nor I."
That's awesome.
So that's pretty. it's quite difficult to be glorious as the battlefield medic, but that's pretty much what I was aiming for.
In fact, that's one of the cooler aspects of being at your funeral, is hearing how many other people have survived because of your character being around is a cool moment, right? Like,
I've been doing LARPs for quite a lot of years, and one question I was asked by people I was explaining this to is, how do you win a game of LARP? And the answer is, when your character dies, you see what impact you have made on the game.
Yeah.
If you die and nobody notices, you haven't done very well. If you die and pretty much the game comes to a screaming halt for your funeral and people are telling stories of your deeds for days afterwards, then yeah, that's good.
I always say, like, dying does people good. You know what I mean? Like, a little bit of dying does you the world of good. It does. Maz, maybe you could tell me a little bit about, like, we've definitely gone a little bit off topic, but with the war stuff, I think we're all passionately missing going on combat, basically. But maybe talk about some of the what's the word for it? I've lost the word.
Skirmishes?
No. The
military organization,
the preconceptions that people have for Dawn that aren't necessarily true, and what people might be surprised by with Dawn. That
What? So if you were to cast your eye briefly on Dawn, you'd think it's a bunch of people that really like fighting, right? And yes, there's definitely an element of us that adore fighting, but there's so much more to Dawn than that. I mean, the culture of Dawn, as in our bards, our storytellers, our singers, the kind of the life of the nation is really very, very strong. And I would say, you know, when you're doing tests as well, a lot of tests are not martial in nature and are actually more inclined to finding a good story or creating a mighty song, all those kind of things as well. So, you know, it's not just about thumpit monkeys, which people can be inclined to think that it is.
Sorry, what did you call them?
Thumpit monkeys.
Thump it
See
monkeys.
It, thump it. See it, thump it.
But it is definitely
seems
more
appealing, though.
I gotta say, after like 2 years-ish off, or whatever it is since we last did it, forever off, I do really want to hit something with a sword, that having been said. But it was so much more than that. And the other thing is, Dawn's really, really good if you've got a family. Dawn's fantastic for families. Because having the central location of the Glory Square, which is where lots of fights happen, but also lots of training and also kind of contests of art. Oh, we've got this amazing art contest that happens once a year. But also it's a place where the kids play. You know, you'll usually find some children there hitting each other with wooden equivalent swords. And that's kind of, one of the lovely things about Dawn.
I think there's something about the way that because we haven't even we touched on it earlier, but the Glory Square. So there's like a roped off section in the middle of the camp, and we'll get to the Glory Square. But what I want to say is like the way that the camps, all the tents ring that square gives a very community vibe to the whole thing. It's like
it's the central point, similar to Wintermark's tree or Vrushka's fire pit, or indeed the Song and Storytime circle for Navarre. It's the central location where stuff gets announced. If there are big announcements, that's where we do it. When we muster for battle, that's where we do it. When there's heralds or whatever, or announcements from other groups coming through, that's where we do it.
But I think it's like, but even just because the thing about Navarre is that we don't camp around it as a central point, right? So around our campfire, the main circle bit, whereas you guys actually all are, and that means that it's kind of like, I've seen like gangs of kids running around, and you can imagine like you can see them from the other side of the square, right? So it's like everyone's kind of keeping an eye on stuff, and it's got a very friendly vibe when you go there and ask questions.
Interestingly, the Glory Square was player built, really. For the first year or so, Dawn didn't have one. I think House Orzel brought it in with them.
Yeah, they bought a metric ton of bunting and a load of uprights. And then as Dawn was fairly small to start off with, and then as we've grown and grown, that Glory Square's got bigger and bigger.
It's
many groups.
It's made the camp Tetris, as the planners think of it, quite difficult because you want this large bit in the middle. On the other hand, it doesn't have a set size, so you can shrink it if necessary.
Yeah, but one of the great things is it means you get loads of groups have a frontage to the Glory Square, which is fabulous. And even those groups was that, like, so my group's shrunk somewhat since everybody died. series of horrific traumatic deaths. Wonderful. There's so much drama and angst, which is one of the beautiful things about Dawn. Is an awful lot about drama and angst.
Dawn does its tragedy as well as it does its glory.
Yeah, it's romantic tragedy as well, right? Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh, I want to go and walk around Dawn.
We've had funerals with, people lying on the ground, holding their swords, people casting flowers and tokens and on their knees, weeping over them and telling stories of them. I've been writing songs to sing at funerals as well. It gets ridiculous.
Do you know what? I need to find someone to court in Dawn. That's what I need to do when I head back to Empire. That would be my my new mission, is to try and find a romantic angle in Dawn.
If I ran into somebody who was trying to do a test of ardor for somebody in Dawn, and he was from the League, and he had one of the more impressive non-military tests. Mm-hmm. He was asked to ask Dawn what they considered glory and what they considered love. All of Dawn. And then come up with a solid answer.
Again, I say that, and then you go and say something like that, and it sounds like an awful lot of effort. An awful lot of effort.
Yeah, it's not effort; it's an awful lot of game. Is what it is.
It's true. I think I was actually I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but I think that's one of the really nice things about, like, especially the long-term ones, right? Like, you had to go up and build personal relationships with every single egregore. Like, that is so valuable to you as an out-of-character player. It's so good.
Yeah, so cool. And things I made kind of friends in character with like every single nation apart from Urizen, who are obviously the worst I see. But big shout out to Luca if he's listening. Yeah, I've made like really good friends I see with loads of different people. So from an in-character angle, that was been really interesting. But from an out-of-character angle, I've adored it because in a way that, you can, as a LERPer, get a bit used to your own gang, right? And so you play with your own little tribe and you don't really get out and about as much as you'd like to. But something like a Test of Metal, where often they're very kind of other nation pointed, and House Navarian do this really, really well, means that you get to see a lot of the field. So it can take you out, not quite out of your comfort zone, but out of the zones that you would usually choose to play within. And so it's absolutely great for taking you outside of Dawn, because Dawn can keep you in because it's amazing.
Maz, I think this is a really great point, and actually we've touched on it in a bunch of these episodes where we've talked to different nations of it becoming quite insular, and that can become like. And I'm not saying that this isn't for people that don't feel confident to do this, then you don't have to do this. But I think there is something incredibly rewarding about trying to push yourself out from, be that within your own nation, and then maybe push out to other nations outside of that. It can be incredibly rewarding,
Yeah.
One thing that Dawn does have as the obvious divider is that it's got the Yo-folk and it's got the nobles. And this is why, to an extent, in the backstory, the Marches had a civil war and then stomped off to leave Dawn because they didn't like being bossed around by the nobles.
Yeah, but I meant to ask about this.
I had a think about it. I actually asked most of the Dawn Facebook about it. What do the nobles need to do? Because they get a lot of rights, certainly on the field. They get waited on. They get they get to participate in the big things, but they also have a rather large chunk of responsibilities. And to an extent, it is they can't really back down from stuff. The nobles of Dawn are the ones who solve the problems. Who, admittedly, yes, frequently by thumping it, but they are at best proactive and decisive and determined, and at worst aggressive and stubborn.
I sometimes feel that it means that like when I've interacted with a noble and what was the Yo-folk or whatever, the Yo-folk seem to be the person that's actually running things rather than the noble. Is my impression of the interactions that I've had with those groups, where the noble may be the one that makes like decisions from the surface, but it's like the Yo-folk that are basically telling them what their opinion is on a lot of things, right? So it's a kind of fun relationship. My question was, can you join as a new player as a noble, or
absolutely. You just choose. So you can either choose, actually, I'm not interested in doing a Test of Metal, but I am interested in being a noble, so I'm coming in as a noble.
Right.
But you can say, I want to play through as a Test of Metal and come in as a Knight Errant, or a Yo-folk looking for a test, or you can come in as a Yo-folk with no intention of going anywhere else. And that's not looked down upon in Dawn. That's just as kind of cool and interesting as all the other areas of Dawn. And specifically for things like money, Nobles don't deal with money.
Yes.
It's not seen as very noble.
You can't really get a great eternal deed by fiddling with the money.
The Yo-folk, nobles are not very good at prosperity. That's not that's not their kind of key skill, I must say. But without a decent Yo-folk behind them, a noble will be going nowhere. And so for Dawn, one of the biggest virtues, I would say, I mean, let's put love and glory as not virtues, obviously. But one of the greatest virtues that I would say.
Maz, we've got a strict policy of not having any heresy on here, so just cut it out, okay? We're on a nice. This is a family show, Maz. Do you know what I mean?
Would be loyalty and pride. And I reckon those two are really key for nobles, but for Yo-folk, loyalty as well. But prosperity, and that's something that nobles really don't hit at all. But the thing that really binds them together are the concepts of loyalty, because you have as well as having authority as nobles, you have responsibility, and just the same way that Yo-folk have responsibility. Mm-hmm. So the two can't work without each other.
Mm.
The nice metaphor that somebody else said was that a house is similar to a racing car team. The noble is the guy at the front who's going to be driving around. He gets to be the face. He gets to do all the high-speed stuff, and he's also got the highest chance of dying. But without any of the Yo-folk, he wouldn't get anywhere. There's the support crew.
Yeah, how does this work? So let's say you have a couple of Yo-folk and a noble, and the noble goes off to fight and gets killed. What does
that's happened to me.
What does the next day look like of that? Like, how does that even operate as a game? Like, how do the characters react to that? Like, what do you do if you're a Yo-folk without a noble? Do you just is there a store you can go to get a new one?
Well, in some cases, if it's a small group with only the one noble, then you may have issues. You may just end up tending the camp and doing the various stuff you do anyway. I had a case that with my second group, House Drummond, Maz, where all the nobles went on the battlefield and they all died in the one battle, including the Knights Errant. And our surviving Yo-folk ended up probably with our blessing taking the monies that we had and moving to another house. So they are in fact still pootling along fine in house. I've forgotten it. The one with the sun. They're pootling along fine in another house. But you might have somebody turning up as, yes, I am an other noble, or you might have a case of they've decided to shut down the group. But given that, because Anvil is biased towards the movers and shakers of the Empire being there, you've got you've got most of the nobles of Dawn and barely any of the Yo-folk of Dawn at Anvil. And there are houses that have problems which we don't have any Yo-folk to handle the money. But I can't think of any houses that are mostly Yo-folk. Most of them are mostly nobles.
My house was mostly Yo-folk until all the Yo-folk died, and I
Sorry, excuse me. How would you say the dress is different between a noble and Yo-folk? If you were gonna play as someone in Dawn and wanted to kind of have a rough idea of what kind of the look and feel of both would look like. I know this is a trap, but
this is a good one because pretentiousness really isn't a problem in Dawn.
It's a good question. Trimmings, shinier trimmings. If you had, for instance, you might say you've got the way we did in House Van Dale is we had very similar tabards, for instance, but the noble would have the one with all the bling on. So a lot of it's to do with and the other thing is to do with the way you act more than just what you wear, I would say. So there's an awful lot more sort of assumption of being treated as a noble, which is lent into by your Yo-folk, who then treat you as a noble. And to be honest, the most obvious nobles are the ones with the best Yo-folk behind them, in my opinion. And that's not to do with just what they're wearing, but very much to do with how the players are playing it. So I think that is as important as the bling. But to be honest, the quality of materials is a big thing. Looking at the trim, and then looking at if you want to look at a really good example, House Vexil do this amazingly well with the way their Yo-folk treat their nobles. It is obvious from a million miles away who the noble is, and they don't even have to be wearing their best. They can be like coming off the battlefield covered in blood and mud, and you'd still know that they're the nobles. I think House Vexy will do that really, really well.
That's awesome, and
It is a fun role-playing bit.
and the kind of nobles is full plate seems fairly common. Is that right?
It's one of the thematic things shared with Highguard to a fair extent, but yes, full plate armor and a bright tabard. That's also something we share with Highguard to an extent. Of this is my house symbol. It is obvious and it's right on my front. It is proclaiming loyalty as well. But as
Really
opposed,
obvious. Oh, that's the other thing. The way you can tell nobles from yo-folk is that the nobles will have kind of front and center heraldry, and nobles can have their own individual heraldry.
whereas the yo-folk will probably be in the house colours, but without a big obvious individual symbol.
Right. Okay. And how? Just while we're on the subject, if someone was like, "Oh, I want to pick up a bunch of tabards," where would you recommend that people? How do you do that? Do you craft your own?
Yeah, we made all of ours at the same time, so they all looked very similar to each other. But you can do things like I think Charlie Moss does them. There are people out there who do you bulk orders on tabards if that's something you want. But tabards, there's a lovely pattern on the wiki, which is very straightforward to be able to making tabards.
Simple tabards are dead easy, and it has the bonus of if a character gets killed in the generic tabard, you can get the tabard back off them and assign it to the next person who wants to join the group.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I had groups
like that.
Yeah. Or it's possibly a case of this is the tabard of this fallen hero. It now falls to you, young warrior. Take it up and earn more glory. I've had groups which didn't have tabards, but had this is our general color scheme, and also we made belt tags. So we all actually had the symbol. We were all dressed in the appropriate colors, but we didn't really have a big obvious tabard. It varies a bit, but generally it's the tabard is very descriptive. Over, as you put it, plate mail or shining chain, or in Maz's case, some very nice resin plate.
Oh yeah, polyplate is the way to go if you are if you love your knees. So yeah, I mean you only get the benefits of medium, but that's not too bad at all because to all intents and purposes, as long as no one looks too close at you, you get shot less often. Although now I get shot all the time. The orcs are figured out. What was I going to say? One of the great things is, say you have like a really bad, so like 4 houses go out in a skirmish, and it is a skirmish wipe, and basically everybody's dead. What you get is you all get back to camp, and you see this massive tabard swap, swapping tabards, joining different groups, and then coming back as like a throwaway character until they figured out what they want to do in a different group, and that works quite well. To have a little pause between characters if it has all gone terribly wrong.
I still don't know what that transition is really. Like I made a complete throwaway character when I died, and it's like hard to know what to do for especially if you die on the Saturday, right? Like it's Saturday morning, you're like, oh bugger, I've got a whole weekend of not
that
being
happened to me. That happened to my second character. He spent the Saturday morning battle. They all died. Mid-Saturday afternoon, by the time, the funerals were all finished and everything was sorted, he spent Saturday afternoon and evening as Yo-Folk number 3 on the left, looking after small child on the tent.
Yeah.
And, sort of collecting the tokens of bereavement from visitors to the house tent. And then, of course, Sunday morning, I was happily monstering. But, yeah, Saturday morning death is not a good one.
Although, I was going to make a joke about Ian dying then, but I won't make it because I don't even want that karma on me, basically. I don't want to...
No, Dawn has done quite well in avoiding a lot of big fights ever since we actually got organised on the battlefield. And this has come up in a couple of other podcasts, looking at, for example, how Wintermark was broken down or how Navarre was broken down into groups on the field. Mm-hmm. Dawn divides for the battles into lances, which is
a big blob of soldiers, basically, right?
Well, sort of, but it's basically one big house or, several smaller houses that are all good friends. Because everybody tends to be for the battles in their particular tabards and colours, this means you're all in a set uniform. So one of the bigger houses in Dawn, Durondal, fields a lance composed entirely of House Durondal. So it's about 20-odd knights, and they're all in exactly the same uniform, which is, as I'm sure you're aware, great for unit cohesion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It also means that the Dornish commander has got, say, half a dozen, 3 or 4 or 6 lances at his command, and say, right, that lance there, go deal with that. And that is a solid unit with its own commander, probably with its own healers and magicians backing them up.
It does feel like you play like heavy shock troops. Like you're,
Yep.
like, is that the right term? I don't know.
I've always thought of us as heavy assault.
Yeah.
It's like dash in and hold. Plugging gaps is big for Dawn. Leading a charge into somewhere exciting is always fun for Dawn. and look at that exposed flank. Wouldn't that be fun maneuver?
I've seen like
Yeah.
I think like when Dawn and Navarre hook up together and start doing some work on flanks, it's horrible. It's a really nasty time. So
the cliche for that is that, you know, Dawn is standing in the middle of the field taunting the orcs and going, "You're all rubbish, we could take you all on, look at us, we are shiny and brilliant and brave." And when the orcs eventually charge, they find their rear ranks will be stabbed up by Navarre when they were watching Dawn.
yeah, very, very. How do elections work in Dawn? Like, do you have like?
Do you want to take a guess?
Is it?
We have a tournament for it.
Oh no, that is no system of governance. That is awful. That's so bad.
Okay. It has changed slightly, but it has the benefit of
entirely true. That
shame.
So is it like you get your own
because
political
what we've
gang?
got now is we've got
Right, Maz?
Sorry,
Maz. Go on.
So things used to be just a giant bun fight, right? And everybody be against everybody in the field, and that's the way you do your elections for general. Is it's whoever wins.
Okay.
But
To
it's
be fair,
more complex now because they changed that because it wasn't really representative of the whole of Dawn. If the only way you could affect it is by affecting a fight. So now we've got favors, don't we?
Yes, it's the favours of Dawn, the little tokens of love, affection, respect. And in this case, special ones for elections. So it is almost a vote of people's particular tokens.
So just
I quite like
the
the tournament system because it meant that you had somebody who was willing to bleed for the position and could build a coalition of their peers to back them up on the battlefield.
Yeah,
But I
I
agree that going for the favours system is probably a bit more inclusive.
Yeah, the thing is, Senate isn't just about fighting people.
Yeah.
I mean, so having a system that is more representative of those people who are non-combatant, I think, is really, really good. So I think the changes they made were very, very positive. The way generals are elected is by interview by the Earls of Dawn, which is really fun. That's the general interviews. I've done a general interview. I crashed and burnt in the most epically fun way. They're really fun to do. So you can kind of interview for the positions of general.
So how many generals would you be talking to for that then? So you sit down and how many nobles? Sorry, how many nobles would you be in front of?
I believe it's whichever earls wish to take part from the Earls Council that wish to take part, and the Earls Council are all the Earls of Dawn.
Which is all the group leaders, which could be anywhere from, for a general's interview, half a dozen to about 20.
Oh, that's
They
interesting.
changed it to senators in the end because it was just a bit much.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I like that as a thing though, having all of the leaders of groups being in some sort of collective communication. Friday and Saturday evenings was the Earls Council. So they all meet up in a great big tent or around a big table in the Dornish bar, and they discuss the business, stuff that has happened, stuff that we need to do, stuff that needs to be dealt with, any interesting tests of metal, etc.
Up those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's usually some flavour of drama will occur during the evening, so that's always
Oh,
nice.
crumbs! Yes, I remember some of those.
So the Earls Council's great. I've said it on a few; they're really fun. They do tend to. If something dramatic is going to happen, often it will spill out of the Earls Council and into the Glory Square. But it doesn't happen that often. It's always fun when it does.
What time does Earls Council usually start?
Oh, 7 o'clock or so in the evening.
Right. And
7 or 8, something like that.
so basically,
it usually starts there.
Go and find a good bar on the Glory Square and sit back and about 8 o'clock and watch a couple of Earls duke it out on the.
I believe this is the time to advertise Wise Guys, which is the bar that overlooks the Glory Square.
I've had a couple of drinks there,
In Dawn.
and it is absolutely one of those. If you're ever on a pub crawl, you will have been there. Like, you're gonna have ended up at Wise Guys. It's notorious. Notorious, is that the right word?
Yes,
Infamous?
guys for the listeners is spelled in this case Guise, as in the character I am portraying, which could be if I am in disguise, if I am playing a role as a troubadour or as a masked knight or as something else.
That's one of the things that's really interesting to play with, which has some kind of parallels with the League, is the idea of taking on for Dawn, taking on a persona such as perhaps the Night of Flowers. One of our festivals is the Night of Flowers, Festival of Flowers, where you can give your someone you admire or someone you detest flowers, and that's depending on what color flowers you give them and how many. Will depend on what the message is that you're giving to them.
The flower code.
Wow. Do you
like Urban, who've got they've got a system and all flowers mean the same thing. For Dawn, every house has their own language.
What? Hold on. There isn't even like a set one, so you might receive
there
flowers
isn't.
and not know what it means.
But Dave, look, the purpose of this,
God.
as with the purpose of the virtues, is to create more game. Because we don't have a set flower code, this means that you can end up with people dramatically getting completely the wrong idea. Oh, this person has fallen madly in love with me. Oh, this person detests me. Oh no, he gave me a black rose. What does this mean? And thus this provides lots of fun.
Your yo folk usually will then go and sort out the pickle, figure out who sent the flowers and therefore what it means, because they'll figure it out, find out the language, come back and sort it all out again. And so the yo folk spend a lot of time undoing the mischief of the Night of Flowers, which is quite fun.
The other good example of the guising turns up in the girding. The girding of troops is one of our hearth magics. Usually in putting on armor, usually your armor. But there have been occasions with people having to pretend or take on the persona or the role of some other character. In which case you're wearing their costume.
And what does the person, while you're wearing their costume, do?
In the majority of the cases I can think of, lie there on terminal. This is the equivalent of, for example, oh, I am dying, but I'm needed for this quest and I've promised to be there. Wear my armor and keep your visor down and go in my name. It's that sort of drama.
I love it.
Amongst many others.
Absolutely. And then you've got things such as the Black Knight, which knight errants can dress as a strange knight that nobody knows by liberal application of a helmet. And able to fight in some situations.
You remember I said the royal tournament for the throne, there were a few people as the Black Knight there. So it was a case of, I wish to fight on this side, but I don't want anybody to know it was me.
I love it. It's so cool. Like I think it's a real sight to see when you go and see Dawn. In fact, I think Geoffrey, you might be my only contact in Dawn at the moment. Apart from you stole our egregore. That's one thing I want to bring up. Very rude of Dawn to do that. So what?
Our egregore now.
What's that?
Yep.
It's our egregore now.
Wow, Maz. Wow, I didn't expect that. I expected maybe an apology would have been nice, but
No. I mean, it's usually Navarre stealing things and stabbing people up in the dark. So if we steal something off you, we feel it's just a token.
There is nothing in the Navarre brief about being murdering knife bastards. There's nothing in the brief about that. It's
how is Murderer's Alley these days?
It's a lovely place and the rent is still very cheap. It's great. I mean, the weird thing about being a Navarre is that everyone calls you I always get offended at people calling us murder hobos, basically. But I'm more than happy to use that stereotype when it comes up. If I can benefit from it, I'll definitely use it 100%.
Happily. For contrast, PvP in Dawn, where people are out to kill each other, tends to be quite obvious because they'll be charging at each other, screaming with large swords.
Yeah, I've never, and this isn't. Please, I'm not asking for this, but I've never been involved really in any sort of assassinations or anything like that. And I think it must be extremely underwhelming when it happens.
You don't assassinate in Dawn.
No.
You challenge them on the field of honor, just to resolve.
Yeah.
Come here, I wish to carve my insults into your flesh.
It's very glorious to kill someone on the sly, you know?
No, but the problem is that I think honestly, there's one line in the brief for Navarre, which is you can't betray your enemy. Okay, and I think that one line is It's the rabbit hole you can go down to basically justify any action. It's like,
interestingly, a problem that Dawn has had. I mean, it's said that glory and love are the Dornish heresies, but the problem, a couple of ones that have come up with some beautiful role playing by people over the years, is hatred and vengeance. Because as Navarre hates the Valorn, the Dawn hate the Druge. So going a little over the top and doing horrible things to the Druge, hating a little too much, being a little too vengeance. We had on one occasion some years ago, Maz, you may remember, somebody dragged a Druge IC into the Glory Square, having dragged them alive all the way from Druge territory, in order to horribly torture them to death at Anvil.
wow.
Yeah, it didn't go down well, did it?
No, it didn't, because this is heading towards the heresy of hatred, if nothing else. But it's definitely the case of things that we could bad rabbit holes we could go down.
But I mean, it's things like glory and loyalty, which are things that make you end up murdering the egregor's husband and then handing yourself into the militia, though.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I think the virtues for Dawn are, you said, loyalty and pride and courage.
Yeah. So basically there was this awful fella. He was the worst. He came round and he'd had a go at the egregor when she was off the field. He was her former husband, I think it was, and he'd basically cut her heels and left her for dead in Druge-infested woods. And obviously, she'd got out of that, and she was now the egregor. And he came back for a bit of a argy-bargy, and to say, well, it's not so bad, really. And then, so he was arrested by the militia, and then they left him in my tent for a long period of time. And he was just the worst. He was saying all sorts of awful things against the egregor. Something that if you have sort of pride in your nation and loyalty to your egregor, you're not going to let pass. So I let it pass for 45 minutes, then I murdered him and then handed myself into the
Oh, Jesus Christ, man! Jesus!
When I murdered him, okay, it was one of the events of mud. Not just mud, all the mud. And so I took a back swing, took out the chandelier, the glass chandelier above our head by mistake, and then murdered him. And then I'm like, right, I'm going to hand myself in. So I dust myself off, straighten myself up, because it's important to look good when you're handing yourself into the militia. Stalk like dramatically out of the tent.
Hold on,
Hold
on. Are you getting ready while there's a dead body next to you in the tent?
Yeah, absolutely, because you've got to look good, right? So I stalk out of the tent. I catch my foot on the rope loop at the bottom of the tent door flap and fall splash. Like, genuinely, it was, the mud was sort of ankle height. So you can imagine, I looked like some kind of swamp creature or Navari.
You look like a monster like you are, Maz, from what you're telling me about this story.
So then, obviously, I did the right thing and went and handed myself into the militia, who really didn't want to get too close because I was so disgusting. But yeah, that was my first real introduction to the magistrates. So that was fun.
Well, did you get away with it?
Yeah. I got a fine. It was.
Oh my God! You got a fine.
It was a virtuous crime.
On the basis of loyalty.
That was when I discovered virtuous crimes are literally the most fun. The system in Empire is just made to make, usually, trials in LERP are like the worst thing. You just scream, I did it and I'll do it again, please kill me now, don't make me sit through a trial. But in Empire, they're just things of beauty. They're not too long. They are just like perfect nuggets of loveliness. And they're an amazing excuse for really epic virtue-based roleplay.
Hold on.
Really good virtue.
Maz, are what you saying that I can do a crime and I'm rewarded for that crime with some really good RP?
Yeah, but yeah, exactly so. Don't everybody go out and do it without a good in-character virtuous reason. But yes, absolutely. It has been, some of my favourite bits of game outside of Dawn have been with the magistrates, or specifically with members of High Guard who have been acting as my virtue priest. Yeah. Brilliant.
Is it like,
lots
Maz, are you back again? I'll get my book. We'll head down, see you down in the courtroom in a few minutes.
The disappointed face. Oh my God. I could just cry the disappointed face I get when I show up. But I had to promise I had to swear to Her Imperial Majesty that I wouldn't commit any more crimes. And since then I've been crime free.
But she's dead now.
Yeah, that's
I believe is she officially dead or is she MIA?
She
officially MIA.
Yeah, I don't know what the call on that is. Like,
I believe the call is she is MIA. The throne is
She's definitely
officially
not coming back,
vacant.
that's for sure.
yeah.
Oh, that was so sad, but also brilliant.
Oh yeah, I'm quite glad that my last character has a happy memory of fighting as a battle mage in the lines and looking over to see the Empress in golden armor pushing through with rod in one hand and shield in the other, going, "Come on, let me at him."
I mean, she was awesome. Like, she still
Yeah.
is, but I mean, really, like, as a monarch, was like, she filled that role so well. You know,
Wow.
I felt a bit like
As Monarch of Dawn, it was a bit of an argument.
well,
but,
yeah.
As Empress, it was lots of
I
fun.
felt like that scene of Monty Python, you know, the one where it's just like, oh, I think that's the Queen or whatever. And like, how can you tell? And it says, well, it's the one with she's not covered in shit. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I felt in Navarre when she came through.
Well, that's because she had Maz to step on every time she needed to walk into the mud.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't
No,
know
not really.
you could literally get away with literally murdering someone.
If
you have
if
full
the
religious
right-
justification and can explain it.
the right virtuous justification and a really good priest. I mean, that's got to be key. So anyone who needs to, Sons of Kuros have the best virtue-based priests ever, especially the loyalty one. I'm just saying.
I mean,
Right, I'll remember that. Loyalty is my current character's virtue, which means that if I get into a punch-up because somebody insulted my Earl, I can fully claim virtuous
you're
defense.
just inspiring me to do like a noir like Empire fiction where there's like a setup and then like the patsy or whatever, like when the police find him like red-handed, he's like, I need a priest, get me a priest, you know what I mean? And then like the best priest in the business like comes over to
If you
sort
do
it out.
that, there will be 4 or 5 people say, have you been following my character around and taking notes?
yeah.
And one of them will be Maz.
Yeah. Is there anything that we kind of haven't touched on when it comes to Dawn that maybe you want to talk about? I'm sure there's loads of things, by the way, so this isn't like an end of the conversation. Just like
An interesting observation I came across, which is that, while thinking about this, is just that, as I mentioned, Dornish nobles are sort of aggressive problem solvers, which comes down to a certain extent, their reputation on the battlefield, because they have real problems, therefore, leaving the major battle to get to somebody else. They can't walk away from it easily.
So it's a kind of, I feel like there's a kind of, it's very hard to stay alive if you really do, like heroes die at Empire is what I mean. And there's like a very heroic vibe to it.
It is. Sometimes it's really hard to die. Genuinely, I'm playing an E1 character, and usually I go through characters like Knife Through Butter. I mean, yeah.
But Maz,
usually
I think it's just an observation, but you are a loved person who are surrounded by your friends. I think that is the true way to survive at Empire, is to...
Yeah.
And it's not about being good at fighting or anything like this. It's like, I said this to Idwin, who's like the voice of the nation in Navarre. She leads the Song and Stories. It's like, she was like, oh, well, it's quite, I don't want to get killed on the battlefield. And it's just like, literally, if people knew you were in danger, the entire nation would charge into the worst fight ever and die if they had to, right? Just to get you out of there. It's like...
I have known one occasion when Maz led a charge and nobody followed. And that was a skirmish. It was when we were chasing a bunch of orcs on the other side of the field with a chest of crystals. And it was 25 degrees in the shade, and everybody else was in heavy plate armor. And Maz was in her resin plate and was still full of bounce. So she went, come on, let's get them. And I charged after her, and I was in aluminium scale mail, so I wasn't weighing anything either. And everybody stopped and turned around, and the rest of the other 20 Dornish knights all stomping through the thigh-high grass going, we can't keep up with you. Yeah, although to be fair, the Dornish thing of noble outruns their line and gets cut down is also entirely glorious and frequent.
I blame the test of metal for actually not dying on the battlefield. Again, it's having friends in other nations also makes a massive difference.
Well, like you said, like Eurozen, right? It's
yeah.
At the end of the day, like it's a social game. But the flip side of that, like Tim Baker, who we had talking on the military game.
Oh, he's lovely, such a sweetheart.
Okay, he really helped me out by like introducing me to a few people and like for guests for the podcast. And generally, he's just like the nicest guy, right? Like we've talked quite a bit since then. And I said to him, like, oh, can I buy you a beer or something? Like, I'll have to buy you a beer afterwards. And he said, oh, no, I don't drink. And I was like, oh, well, what can I do to kind of say thank you? And he says, oh, well, if you see me on the battlefield, try really hard to kill me. And I'm like, that's game. That's a real player right there, you know. Like, if that's what you really want from the game, like, and my point is like, being social is a double-edged sword, because you may well find that you have a lot of orcs in other nations, right, that are trying to kill you on a regular basis if they recognize you.
Well,
the thing is, I've got a bit paranoid of late, you know, before I left. For the past couple of years, I've been carrying a stopwatch with me so that I can make the stopwatch do the counting. Mostly because I worried that I'm going to cheat my death count by counting badly, but also so I can scream for help really loudly, or curse the orc who's before me, who I think is going to be the person I end up dying to, and kind of having that lovely kind of role play, being able to role play your death. Ooh, that's like the best thing. And the Dornish, I reckon, do that really well. You see, oh my God, the things that make your heart cry when you see two Dornish people dragging themselves towards each other so they can die in each other's embrace. And it's just the most epic thing either. And if you're trying to do your death, that kills that kind of role play. But a stopwatch, dudes, everybody get a stopwatch. You just hide them under your fan brace. It's really easy to hide them, and it means that you can concentrate on role playing your death rather than counting your death. And I think that's kind of, and also, you know, as a sort of added benefit, you can be sure in yourself that you haven't counted badly, which I think is quite important. Well, for me, it's quite important because I always worry people. I always worry about people. I overthink things. So
the very first Empire event, Dawn took a heck of a kicking in the battle. And however, Dawn had looked at the rules for terminal, for example, and at death counts, and decided we were going to play it to the hilt. So my tent ended up as the field hospital, and the general who'd commanded that battle had a succession of night after night after night lying in his arms and dying, looking up at him and saying, you failed us all. And then they die, and the next night would be carried in.
Jesus.
He had basically guilt tripped with a huge collection of dying knights all glaring at him as they died. Actually, that character hasn't been back since.
I think this happened.
Dawn gets a lot of use out of terminal and tragedy.
This happened when I was monstering. This is ages ago, back when we were first starting. I caught two Dornish nobles trying to get back to the lines, and we were like, I was in the back lines of the orcs, and I just found them and went, hey everyone, look, it's these guys. Like, really, like a child, like innocently not really thinking about what I was doing. And they came over and I was like, all right, they were going to fight, and I was like, listen, give it up, surrender, you know. And they threw their weapons down, and then some other orcs came along and went like, no prisoners, and they just butchered them. And it was like, I felt so bad because it was such a brutal death, man. Like, honestly, I felt terrible. And they were the goodies. We were definitely the baddies. I know we were the orcs, but man, heartbreaking for them.
And that was when you were the Jotun.
Yeah. It wasn't Jotun. I mean, honestly, Geoffrey, you probably know some of the stuff that we've got up to better than I do.
I've been listening to some of your more interesting battle reports. I like the battle stories.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a few more battle stories in this year, basically. That's my big hope for 2021, is that we'll get at least maybe one, maybe two events.
Second... Yeah, it's looking like I'm hoping for 2 events.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the dream. I know. Stop.
Interestingly, next event, we're going to have a large wave of new players. Because there's been quite a lot of new people turning up and going and thinking this looks like fun, which means that myself and Maz will be the first wave of players, and Dave, you'll be there with the second wave, and then there'll be a third wave of players, and there'll have thousands of them. And who knows, you might get people
wave 20 by now, I reckon, you know.
Yeah, but
it's Dave, you might get people turning up and saying, no, we're the Ashbourne.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. Yeah, I'm curious about...
Running joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, like, I mean, in so many ways, what Empire will look like when we go back. Like, obviously, I say all this, like, I really hope for 2 events if it's safe and the data supports that, right? Like, we should say that very clearly. It's
to bring it back to Dawn, we will therefore have a lot of new people who will have to persuade, no, we are not actually chivalrous. No, we do not have to be honourable.
Yeah, I mean...
And just because it's a great deed, it doesn't mean it has to be nice.
But just because it's a great deed doesn't mean it has to be martial either. And I think that's something that we keep having to. That's a drum I will bang till the cows come home.
Oh, yes, fair enough.
Yeah, maybe we can just talk
I mean,
briefly
quite
about
difficult
like
to do some
what
of
were a
those.
few examples of non-combat like heroic things that you can do. Just for example, just for anyone that's listening.
I mean, there's every year there's a contest of art.
The Empress Rakilda.
There we go. Thank you.
Named after the first Empress who was directly from Dawn, who had the legendary test of metal of bind the dusk to the dawn, for which she did storytelling and singing and kept the entire audience so fascinated they didn't notice the entire night had passed.
Nice.
But that's another example of non-martial test. But yes, the festival's got some wonderful singing, painting, storytelling, variety of stuff.
Beautiful kind of embroidered quilts and amazing it's just some gorgeous songs and storytelling, puppetry making, all sorts of kind of genuinely beautiful art that cake making. God, there were some good looking cakes there.
Yeah.
But it's genuinely beautiful pieces of art that people have spent days on. Say again?
Which season is this?
I think that's the spring one, isn't it?
I'm literally lost. I don't know whether I'm coming or going. So
I believe it's usually E2, which means it's going to be E4 this year.
Oh no, don't. That's not. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in PD right now trying to work out what to do about the.
Well, yeah. Luckily, that's not our fault.
Like it's almost like maybe just one event, because I always figure like the first event of the year shouldn't be winter. I think that's a weird. I think it should be winter should be the last one, and then we start with spring at the start of the new year.
It has been a bit of a puzzle, but usually when PD started, they had the first event in Easter, so they had the occasional 4-day event. So it was much earlier in the year, and so it was colder, wetter, and muddier, and so very much more winter.
All the worst weather happens that one event.
Yes.
God, the total first E1, it was it was freezing, like super cold.
But Maz, do you not remember when the mud froze? We were grateful because the traction improved.
Yes, it stopped sucking our boots. Yeah, that was awful. But
-10.
they changed. They moved the timing of that first event, which I think was absolutely glorious. It made it much better.
Yeah, I'm actually I've been doing a whole bunch of overtime at work, which is why there probably hasn't been as many episodes of the podcast, which I apologize for. But I've been doing a lot of overtime, and I'm looking at like, should I buy myself a tent? The audacity of owning my own tent. And then I looked at ones with like having their own stove in there, and I was like, that would be so tempting.
It's so good.
But then I'm worried like, oh no, but then I'll just end up with a whole bunch of like smelly dudes in my tent, like way on in the evening, because they're all just crowding around the fire,
But it's your tent. You kick them out. That's the great thing about owning your own tent.
Maz, you're
like,
you're a lot more firm than I am. I don't know. They'll probably just ignore me.
Say just start taking your clothes off, they'll get the hint.
No, well, the problem is that they might get the hint. Yeah, who knows? Things get crazy in my camp. Who knows? But yeah, right. Maybe we should start wrapping things up there. Thank you so much for talking to me about Dawn. They're such a wonderful, fun nation to interact with as a player.
Yeah, one way or another, we are memorable.
Yeah, very much so. Is there anything that you guys are kind of looking forward to with going back to, and what with Dawn that you're looking forward to and you've missed the most, do you think?
Well, I'm going to have my role in my group is battlefield healer, and also to a certain extent in the camp team dad. I'm the one who keeps trying to feed people.
You're doing valuable
work. Make sure all the nobles have had a drink before they go on the battlefield.
Everyone gets some water in them.
So I'm looking forward to that, to being able to be hospitable. I've also got a lot of stories to tell and songs to sing, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with all the different groups. So doing that thing where you'll wander round the edge of the glory square and you'll stop and chat in all the different tents, and you'll usually be dragged into some amazing drama or other. that accidental storytelling, that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think there's. I've had a lot of time playing D&D this year, which I've really, really enjoyed. But I think it's really enhanced a lot of my love of RP, and kind of I really want to express that now when I get back on the LARP field. Is kind of play around a lot more with getting into character and all that stuff. I think that's.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if I can manage it, I'll drag you to Dawn for a drink and a cake and a story.
I'll hold you to that, Jeffrey. I'll hold you to that. Even if it's on the Friday afternoon or whatever, we'll have to share a drink. But guys, thank you very much. We've been trying to do where we'll do. Does Dawn have a call and answer? So, for example, Navarre has strength to the Empire, strength to Navarre. Or do you all just yell glory at the same time?
Dawn and glory.
Glory! Glory!
Glory!
It's like a fortress. Every window is boarded up. See if we can find the grappling hook in my bag. Ah, yes. That's the one. Stand back. Right then, follow me.